The Olympics have a rich architectural legacy, designing incredible stadiums and facilities that excite and inspire. The 2024 Paris Olympics are no exception, as they mark a new era in the design of the Games. Gone are the days of vast, purpose-built complexes that tend to cost a lot of money and aren't designed for a life after the Games. For the Paris Games, they've elected to use existing venues, with a few smaller temporary venues popping up around the city, taking advantage of the incredible landmarks the city has to offer. For instance, the volleyball competitions will have a backdrop of the Eiffel Tower, while the equestrian events will take place on the grounds of Versailles. Only 2 permanent venues will be built: the Aquatic Center, designed by Vinhoven CS, and the Adidas Arena, designed by SCAU. They were built in the heart of vibrant communities, and once the Games are done, they'll serve a function in those communities, with the Aquatic Center hosting local events and the Adidas Arena becoming home to the Paris Basketball Club. The Aquatic Center is designed to evoke movement. The building is made mostly of wood, which brings a warmness to it. It also has ample natural lighting that floods the interior. The Adidas Arena was built using recycled material, from the seats all the way to the aluminum cladding on the exterior. The Olympic Village will also be transformed into a mixed-use development that'll feature housing and office space. These new developments make the Olympics more sustainable and show how these games can go beyond the life of them. Hey everyone, my name's Steve. I'm a writer and a lover of all things architecture. And join me as we take a look at some of the most significant examples of Olympic architecture. But before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on all things architecture. Now, let's get back to our story. The first modern Olympic Games were held in 1896 in Athens, Greece, where the concept of the Olympics originated back in ancient times. Over 280 athletes participated from 13 nations. The main stadium was called the Panathenaic Stadium. Its role as an event space began in the 16th century BC, in which spectators sat on natural embankments. In 330 BC, a stadium was built out of limestone, and in 144 AD, an addition of marble stands were added. Over the centuries, it was left abandoned. Its stonework was eventually taken to be used on other buildings. In the late 1880s, an excavation was conducted to uncover the ancient structure. In 1895, a year before the Games, it was rebuilt to house them. In reconstructing the stadium, some of the bottom rows retained their marble seating, while the upper parts of the stadium were constructed using limestone. Today it remains an important landmark in Athens. It was used again for the 2004 Olympics, and it manages to link ancient history with modern history, and is still in use today. It was most recently used for the handover ceremony for the Paris Olympics. Fast forwarding a few years, the Amsterdam Olympics in 1928 marked an interesting turn for the Olympics as it embraced the relatively new modernist style called the Amsterdam School. The stadium, designed by Jan Wills, featured a brick facade that was devoid of ornamentation, which was a first for the Olympic Games, as previous ones mostly stuck to the triumphant Beaux-Arts style of architecture. Outside the stadium was the 150-foot-tall Marathon Tower, which featured a cauldron on top that burned a symbolic flame. It introduced the concept of the Olympic flame that burned throughout the duration of the Games. It would also mark as an icon for the Games. And the stadium showed the artistic advancement of the Netherlands and remains an important fixture of Amsterdam's architectural legacy. Following World War II, Olympic stadiums fully embraced the modernist movement. Helsinki's in 1952 featured a functionalist and modernist stadium with ribbon windows and its 236-foot-tall tower that held the Olympic flame. Another interesting mid-century modern stadium was built for Rome's 1960 Olympics called the Palazzetto dello Sport, or the Little Sport Palace. It was built to hold basketball events and was designed by Pier Luigi Nervi. It demonstrated the innovative ideas of prefabrication with a prefabricated concrete dome that was 200 feet in diameter and was supported by concrete flying buttresses. It was built in a record 40 days, and today remains open, hosting several sporting events throughout the year, and recently came out of a multi-year renovation. Now, the Munich Games took a different approach from the previous ones. Instead of creating a series of venues in a large paved complex, they placed them within an Olympic park where nature dominated. It was designed by Gunther Benich's firm and created a park-like setting with venues hugging the ground. Even the main stadium was sunken into the earth, making the scale more accessible to people. At the heart of the plan was a nearly million-square-foot acrylic glass roof that blanketed over several venues, creating a harmonizing feel for the entire complex. The design of the massive tent-like structure was completed by Frey Otto. Otto created a network of cables secured to tall masts. It was similar to other structures he had designed, but the Munich project was unique in its ambition. For Los Angeles' second time hosting the Olympic Games, they decided to utilize 75 existing facilities, kind of a precursor to what would be done in Paris's Olympics. The only problem was those facilities were found all over the LA area. To create a unifying identity for the Olympics, the architect John Jurdy, known for designing immersive shopping malls, along with the graphic designer Deborah Sussman, designed a collection of brightly colored graphics, signs, and small structures, with bright pastel colors and abstract shapes. Jurdy used repurposed materials like old scaffolding to create archways and pavilions. Each venue had a festive atmosphere that made the Olympics that much more special and also eye-catching. As the Olympics entered the millennium, they were swept up in the era of the starchitects, thanks in part to high-profile projects like Frank Gehry's Guggenheim in Bilbao or I.M. Pei's Louvre Museum. The Olympics thought using such high-profile architects would draw even more attention to them. In the 2004 Olympics in Athens, Santiago Calatrava designed a roof for the city's existing stadium, with 2 sweeping arches to support it. He also worked to create a unifying sports complex around it. After the Games, many of the venues were abandoned, with the main stadium only being used sparingly over the years. 4 years later, though, in 2008, Beijing, China took the idea of a starchitect-designed stadium to a new level. The National Stadium, or as it was more commonly known, the Bird's Nest, designed by the Swiss firm Herzog and de Meuron, and captured the imagination of the public. It was featured prominently in advertisements and symbolized the introduction of a modern China to the world. The stadium served as a visual icon of the Olympic Park, which only became more visually interesting at night as the lights behind the interweaving beams illuminated to create a beautiful, soft glow. The stadium is still used regularly, including being used to host the Winter Olympics in 2022, and it also helped further propel Herzog and de Meuron's profile as one of the world's top architectural firms. With the Beijing Games setting a new standard, London knew it needed to up its architectural game. They took a large, economically depressed industrial area and transformed it into a large Olympic park. The jury to find architects to design the venues was co-chaired by the famed architect Richard Rogers, who designed the Pompadour Center with Renzo Piano. He worked to get high-profile architects involved, including securing a spot for Zaha Hadid to design the Aquatic Center, which ended up being one of the most architecturally significant modern structures in England. The Aquatic Center features Hadid's signature sweeping curves, with plenty of natural light that floods the interior. It was a stone's throw away from the Olympic Stadium designed by Populous, which was constructed using recycled materials to create its subtle but stately form. Overlooking the entire Olympic Park was the Orbit Tower, offering visitors a view of the park and the surrounding city. Over a decade after the Games, the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park has been welcomed by the surrounding area, with it drawing residents and visitors alike. The venues continue to host events, and is today one of the top examples of what can be done with the Olympic facilities after the Games. But with all these, we've just scratched the surface of Olympic architecture. As with the Games themselves, the architecture can demonstrate the best of humanity and cause us, the spectators, to be excited and inspired. Now, what are some of your favorite examples of Olympic architecture? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, check out some of our other videos. Anyway, my name's Steve, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, here on All Things Architecture, where every building has a story.